So Adam Copeland opened up Dynamite last night, and obviously, people, in their own opinion, have said that what he did last night was probably at the request of Tony Khan, and that basically being a rah rah speech, if you will, a rally the troops kind of speech. And why do fans feel that way? Well, because some of them feel that what Adam was saying in that promo, about negativity being spoke of, when it comes to AEW and such, was basically, Tony Khan's response filtered through Adam Copeland to what CM Punk said on the Ariel Helwani show, or Ariel Helwani's MMA show. And, if that's what they believe, fine. That's their opinion. But honestly, though, I think it didn't. I think even though you had Adam Copeland come out there and do this rally the troops kind of speech, you know, with all due respect to Adam Copeland, formerly Edge, let's be honest. I'm not trying to, not trying to disrespect what he said. Again, not trying to disrespect it, but I think honestly it did more harm than good. It did more harm than good because once again, um, he validates what CM, him going out there and doing this validates CM Punk's, CM Punk's response to a question Ariel gave him about Tony Khan, and basically that is Tony Khan's not a boss. He's a nice guy, but he's not a boss. Because if he was a boss, if he was a leader, he would, he himself would potentially come out there and address it himself. He'd get in that ring and do what Adam Copeland did, but also or also I should say, acknowledge if not reference Phil Brooks and say, hey, I heard what you said about us. And here's the thing: we're not that way. We're not what you say we are. You're just a bitter person that didn't understand what he was getting himself into when I signed you. Something like that. But he didn't. He had a Hall of Famer in WWE, a legend, in Adam Copeland, formerly Edge, go out there and do it. Now, was that Adam's intention originally? Who's to say? I mean, Tony Khan surrounds himself with a lot of people, even legendary wrestlers like Copeland and Danielson. And did Copeland tell Tony, hey, people are talking about how CM Punk scorched earth AEW and made you look like a fool, and let me go out there and tell them otherwise. Was that Adam's call? Maybe, because Adam is the kind of person, with all due respect, that is a team player. No matter where he goes, whether he's with WWE, for a majority of his career, or been with AEW for the past, what has it been, like 7 months? Past 7 months, I believe. He's always going to be a team player. And he's going to go out there and show his support for the team he's playing for. And that's it. It's kind of like when, and JD from Off the Script, who basically, in his opinion, feels that what CM Punk said on the Ariel Helwani show caused more division than it, did any good. More division, more tribalism in wrestling than it did do any good. But JD, I think, summed it up best. Just because somebody might go elsewhere and everything doesn't mean you need to stop supporting them. He talks about how Freeman went from the Braves to the Dodgers. Does it mean he's going to stop supporting and liking Freeman? No. No, it doesn't. It means, it just basically means Freeman has gone, elsewhere to continue his career, and he's going to continue supporting him even if he's, playing for a rival team. He even brought up, Chipper Jones. Like, hey, if Chipper Jones would have gone to the Mets, he's a lifelong Brave, or who was a lifelong Atlanta Brave, I should say. That if he goes to the Mets, does that mean he's going to stop supporting Chipper Jones? No. He's going to support him and hope that maybe he comes back and finishes his career with the Braves. I mean, there are some players that used to be San Francisco Giants that, like Sergio Ramos and Pablo Sandoval, who went elsewhere but then decided they wanted to wrap up their careers as Giants, because there's a saying that I'm sure is very similar to many things, to what a lot of, teams have, said for them and their players, that, it doesn't matter where you go, throughout your career, you are forever a Giant. And basically, what Ramos and Sandoval recently, is they decided they wanted to finish up their careers as Giants. That's what they wanted to do, and they did. They finished up their career as Giants. Sandoval most recently in the last spring training game against the A's. That's what he did. So it doesn't, and you look at and here's the thing too. Brandon Crawford is now with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's been a Giant for most of his career. Do you think he liked going to St. Louis? No, but the management felt like they didn't have any more room for him, any place for him to play. But does that mean he's going to finish out with the Cardinals? No. The way things are going, he's going to do his season with the Cardinals, and then he's going to probably finish out with the Giants, and that's it. He's going to probably play a few games in spring training, and then finish out, before the regular season starts with the Giants, and that's it. Does that mean someone like my mom's going to stop supporting him? No. I mean, when Tim Lincecum went to the Rangers, and he was a Giant, did she stop supporting him? No. She would tune in to see when the Rangers would play. She put reminders because she wanted to support those that she felt were forever Giant. Get what I'm saying? So just because somebody goes elsewhere, like Brandon Belt, he went to the Toronto Blue Jays. Does that mean she's going to stop supporting Brandon Belt? No. She's going to support him, and whenever the Blue Jays play, and she sees, oh, it's Brandon Belt. He's playing. He's at bat. Does that mean she's going to stop supporting him? No, she's going to support him because he's a forever Giant in her mind. That's the thing. So it doesn't matter where somebody goes, because yes, they're always going to be tied to a place they've been at most of their career, but just because they're coming out and doing a rah-rah speech or rally the troop speech for their new team, it doesn't mean you turn your back on them. And sometimes, that person might just get, told, and again, this is how people look at it, view it, they might get told by their boss, hey, can you go out and, rally the troops, rally the fan base, and tell people how great AEW is. And, oh, here's another $1,000 to encourage you to do it. Could have that been, something that happened, to where Adam Copeland was just initially going to go out and try to build up his 6-man tag at Dynasty and build up his feud with Malachi Black? Yeah. But then again, him and Danielson being the two legendary guys that they are, probably heard about this, probably heard people in the locker room talking about this and saying, hey, look, Tony, you need one of us to go out there and rally the troops, rally the fan base, because they're gonna believe more of what CM Punk said about this company and you than anything, unless somebody goes out there, unless you go out there, unless one of us goes out there. Could have that happened? Yeah. And that's them being a team player. Even if maybe they do believe it, themselves. Maybe, even if they do believe some of what Punk said to be true themselves, they went out there as a team player. Adam Copeland went out there probably, if it was his own decision, and, as a team player, and said what he had to say. I mean, he even interweaved, his little program with Malachi Black, which would give people the impression that maybe this was his own decision as well. But still, either way you slice it, it doesn't feel like a genuine response coming directly from Tony Khan. And the thing is, you can have JD come out and say what he wants to say about the Punk interview, and what he said about AEW dividing and this tribalistic fan base even more. But the same could be said, for what Adam Copeland did, because some would feel that it was filtered, through Adam Copeland from Tony Khan. It didn't come directly from Tony Khan. And if someone like, let's say, David Zaslav hears this, sees this, if you will, and wonders, okay, why is Adam saying this and not, Tony himself? Like, why isn't Tony being the one out there talking up how great AEW is? It's going to make him tend to believe more of what Punk is saying than anything else, even more so than what I mentioned yesterday. So, to me, I think what needs to happen, honestly, and it goes back to the audio video I did yesterday. What needs to happen more so than anything now is Tony Khan needs to, truthfully, unfiltered, he needs to basically, go out there and respond to what CM Punk says. He needs to get on a platform and say, and not a platform that's Twitter, aka X, not that platform, but a platform that's in front of the camera, and basically says, look, here's the truth. Here's what really happened. ... He needs to do that. Because if not, sooner or later, if not already, that interview that CM Punk did, like I said in my audio video yesterday, it's going to get to David Zaslav. It's going to get to Kathleen Finch. And it's going to, make them believe and side with what Punk is saying about AEW and Tony Khan more so than anything Tony Khan would say. Because David Zaslav, one of the first things he'll do is he'll go to Tony Khan and be like, look, why did you say this, on the collision, the Dynamite, or the collision, if you will, after All In, and CM Punk is suddenly telling you something, is suddenly saying and confirming what everybody else has said, that being something else. Why is he saying this, which everybody else has said pretty much almost to be truth, be the truth to a T, and yet you went out and you're saying this. Who's telling the truth? He's going to want to know. He's going to want to know. And if Tony Khan, like I said, wants to remain on TBS, he wants to remain on TNT, he wants to have that max streaming deal, then if I'm him, I'm just going to have to just straight up say, okay, fine, here's the truth, and tell the truth to Zaslav, tell the truth to the world, and be like, here's what really happened. And, go from there and hope that, and hope for the best. But, yeah, the response Adam Copeland gave yesterday, even interweaving his storyline program now that he's starting with the House of Black and Malachi Black, what he did yesterday, people can interpretate as either something he did on his own, because, like I mentioned, maybe he talked to Tony Khan along with the likes of Danielson, mentioned what was happening, and said, hey, let one of us go out there and try to, shine a brighter light, a more positive light on this company than what Punk said. Or, and maybe that's what he did because he's a team player. Or maybe Tony Khan went to him and said, look, I know you're on the program tonight to do a promo for your program, for your match, your 6-man at Dynasty, and to continue building your program at Malachi, but can you talk about how great AEW is first because of what Punk said negatively about us in that MMA Hour interview? Maybe that's what happened too. We don't know. But one thing's for certain, based on what people heard last night from Adam Copeland, whether it was his own accord or it was encouraged by Tony Khan, and Tony Khan, wrote off another extra zeros for him to do it, it wasn't the best response. And especially responding in a building that's, seated, 15, 16,000, and only had it was 4,000. That's not good. That's not good. And, here's the thing. David Zaslav is going, if he hears this interview and he hears what Punk says about, AEW having a, an indie mindset, it's being ran on an indie mindset. It's being, a showcase is an indie show on a major platform and not a major threat to WWE or anything like that. Again, unless he gets a rebuttal, from Tony Khan, a legit, truthful rebuttal, again, like I said, he's going to believe more of what Punk said. Should he hear about this interview, hear what he said, and he's going to probably ask Tony Khan, look, is what Punk's saying true? Is because of the fact that you're running more on that indie mindset, and everything, that independent wrestling mindset, is that why nobody wants to watch? Because you're not trying to be, yourself. You're not trying to be AEW. You're trying to all you're doing is just being an indie, fed on a major platform. Is that what this is about? Is that why, you want to stay on here? Because you want to show how great independent wrestling is and not try to be yourself? You know, I mean, David Zaslav could point that out, and who knows? Zaslav could say, look, if you don't get out of that mindset, I might not want to renew you. I mean, like, I might want to keep you, but I'm not going to have you on this major platform of TBS and TNT anymore, and I might put you on True TV. I might even put you on Discovery Channel. Do you want that? And I guarantee you, if he brings up something like that, after hearing and listening to the Punk interview, if he does, I guarantee you Tony Khan's going to be like, I'm not saying he will, but Tony Khan might be he might be like, oh shoot, how do I get out of this indie mindset? What do I do? And then that's when you're going to start hearing, again, just my opinion, that's when you're going to start hearing a lot of contracts being reconfigured to be AEW only. Like, you can't go, like, basically being very similar to WWE, to where you only compete for AEW only. You don't compete elsewhere. You don't compete for these other indie places like GCW or House of Glory and all that. No. You're AEW exclusive only. You're only here. I wouldn't be surprised if you start hearing stuff like that. If you start hearing news like that come out. Again, not saying that's going to happen, because it's all based on whether or not David Zaslav will hear this interview, and I feel he will. And, since he valued CM Punk, and that's the reason he gave Tony Khan those 2 hours of Collision on Saturday nights, specifically for Punk, it's going to be, kind of an interesting meeting between the two, especially next month when the upfront situation occurs and the media rights deals get ready to be negotiated even more. I mean, here's the thing. Tony Khan can come out and, brag about the fact that, I have an indie deal ready. I've got some, not indie deal, but I've got a media rights deal set up. I'm going to get some money back and everything. He can play that up all he wants, whether it's true or not. But until people get proof, no one's going to believe him. No one's going to believe him, especially after this interview. No one's going to believe him. And especially since he was not the one to respond back, to rebuttal back, no one's going to believe him. So, if I'm him and this interview gets to Zaslav, I've got to just be straight up with the guy. I would have to tell him the truth. I'd be like, I'd have to tell him the truth that's somewhere in the middle of, this, of what really occurred, of whether what Punk said is true to a point, and, whether it's not to a point, he's going to have to find a middle ground on that, and I guarantee you, Zaslav, Finch, someone's going to bring up what Punk said about the indie mindset, and they're probably going to say, hey, if you want to stay on here, you need to get out of that and focus more on being AEW, not just another major independent fed. And Tony Khan's going to have to give a response to that too if they bring it up. I mean, here's my question. What would his response be? Would it be like, he knows he has to be his own, his company has to be their own thing, but he wants to send a message to WWE that, hey, if you want more people to like you, let your talent go out there and perform elsewhere as well? Is that the message he's trying to send? If so, then just admit it. Just admit that that's the mindset. That's the reason you have this indie mindset on a major platform, because you're sending a message to WWE. The point is, Tony Khan needs to do a rebuttal, and the rebuttal he filtered, the rebuttal we got last night through Adam Copeland, whether it was of Adam's own accord, or it was something that Tony Khan, asked him to do, requested him to do, paid him an extra 000 to do, along with trying to build up his match, in his program with the House of Black. That's up to anybody's interpretation. That's up to anybody's opinion of, why all of a sudden, Adam Copeland, before he, really, not before, but, while he was interweaving a little bit of his program with Malachi, why instead of, just straight up doing a promo on the House of Black, he decided to do this rah-rah speech. It's going to be up to a lot of people's interpretation. And again, people like JD are going to have their opinions on the CM Punk interview on the MMA Hour, and they're going to say what they want to say. They're going to say, that they enjoyed it and they're glad the truth is out there because they're more likely to believe what Punk said. But they also have the right to say that even though they believe it, they feel it's divided the fan base even more so in a tribalistic way than ever before. And that's their opinion. Some may not feel that way. They may feel like, hey, the only reason the AEW fans are mad is because Punk's telling the truth and they don't want to hear it. It's one of those situations where basically, it's all up for speculative theory. It's all up for speculative opinion, on what you want to believe or not when it comes to what CM Punk said on Monday and the rebuttal that was given via Adam Copeland last night on Dynamite, either whether or not it was his own accord or it was it was asked of and by Tony Khan and filtered through, Adam Copeland. It's always going to be speculative theory. We may not know the answer until Adam, hangs it up. If he hangs it up with AEW, maybe has one more match or two in WWE, that's up to him. But, we won't know the truth until Adam Copeland hangs it up and says, hey, if somebody asks him about it, and he says, yeah, that was my, and he either says, yeah, that was my own decision, or he says, yeah, Tony Khan asked me to do it, and he kind of wrote me a nice little check as a bonus to make, to have me do it, that's probably when we'll find out whether it was his own accord or not. But we'll see. We'll have to see. But yeah, the rebuttal. I'll be honest. I'm a fan of Adam Copeland. I'm a fan of Edge. I'm glad he's getting one last opportunity to end his career on his own merits. Especially with his best friend, which eventually is going to happen. We know that. But, but let's be honest, whether it was his own decision or it was a decision made by Tony Khan and filtered through, as a response from him, filtered through Adam Copeland, honestly, especially in a venue which could seat more, but only, sat like less than that, it only sat like, what was that, like 25%, 30% of what it seats, initially. Be honest, it wasn't a good response. It wasn't a good rebuttal. It wasn't. And honestly, David Zaslav's gonna, I'll be honest with you, David Zaslav, I believe, is gonna hear about this soon. He's gonna hear about it. He's gonna talk to Tony. He's gonna want to know what's going on. Who is CM Punk being truthful and everything, especially when the media right deals come up. And honestly, if I'm Tony Khan, I would, like I said in my audio video, I seek the advice of those I surround myself with and be like, okay, how do I respond to Zaslav if he asks me about the interview and some of the things Punk said? What do I do to try to keep us on TBS and TNT? He's going to have to rebuttal. And if they say, well, one of the ways you can do it is to go out on Collision, this Saturday, or go on Collision, next week, or on Dynamite next week, live in the ring, and just do it. Just be a man, just, cinch it up and respond. It's the best way you can. So yeah. If I'm Tony Khan, and I know Zaslav's going to hear about this interview, he's going to listen to it, possibly, same with Finch and others, and they're going to hear some of the things that he brought up. They're going to look at the notes, a lot of the transcripts notes that are floating around on the internet. Yeah. And then they're going to see the response he made, that people pointed out that he did, through Adam Copeland, whether that was Adam's, own doing or not. All I can say if I'm Tony Khan is, like I said yesterday, I get on my hands and knees and I pray Zaslav lets me remain on TBS and TNT because, unless, I can, because if he doesn't give Zaslav a response, Finch a response, kind of find the truth, or kind of get that truth that's in the middle and give it to them, yeah, the future of AEW in an extension, Ring of Honor, is up in the air. It is up in the air, and in a way that is not going to be good for them or the company. Because yeah, they might keep them, but it won't be on the two major networks that they're on right now. And that's a fact. That is a fact. And you know, I just if I'm Tony Khan, like I said, if he asked me, if one of the things he asked me of, if he hears about it, if he brings it up, of hey, is what CM Punk's saying true, that you're more of an indie-minded set promotion, and you're not trying to be yourself? What do I tell? What do I tell him? What's my answer if I'm Tony Khan? Do I say, well, that's because how a lot of the talent, the majority of the roster thinks, and I don't want to take that away from them? Or is his answer, yeah, I understand we got to be our own thing, but I'm doing this to send a message to the people up in Connecticut that, hey, if you want your talent to be happy, let them, do other places. Let them wrestle elsewhere. Again, he's got to come up with a legit answer. He's got to give the truth that is somewhere in the middle. As to as a response to what Punk said, because the rebuttal, like I said, with all due respect to Edge, Adam Copeland, whether of his own doing or not, it's not good. It's not a good rebuttal. And eventually, David Zaslav's going to, he's going to ask, okay, why was Adam? Because I know Zaslav might. Oh, I wouldn't say I know. Let me correct myself. I'm assuming Zaslav will see that and be like, okay, why is Adam Copeland doing this rah-rah speech? What's going on? And then that's going to lead him to the interview from Punk. And because he valued Punk, and again, going back to what I said earlier, that's why he gave, AEW 2 hours of Collision. Or Tony Khan, that is, 2 hours of Collision on Saturdays. He's going to look at that. It's going to lead him to the interview. He's going to hear that. And he's going to be like, okay, what's going on here? Who's telling the truth? Because he's going to more than likely believe Phil than he is Tony, because he valued him a lot. He valued him a lot more so than Tony. Let's be honest there. But we'll have to see. We will have to see what happens. But yeah, the rebuttal, not good. Be honest with you, was not good. And it's gonna get back to that. And again, Zaslav will see that. It'll get back, and it's gonna lead him and Finch and everybody else that's in charge of the media rights for AEW, or to get them that media rights to remain. It's gonna get them. It's gonna get to them. It's gonna lead them to the interview, and that's when Tony's gonna have to realize, okay, I'm gonna have to come up with an answer. I'm gonna have to give them the truth that's somewhere in the middle. And if he doesn't, all I can say, and I'm not saying it's gonna happen, because I'm hoping they stay on TBS. I'm hoping they stay on TNT. But if I'm Tony Khan, if I don't find a way to give them the truth that lies somewhere in the middle, then I might as well start, I might as well start putting together advertisements of where to find Dynamite and Collision and Rampage in the fall. And, if I'm, and I know, and Tony Khan, he doesn't feel like he's the kind of person that wants to do that, but this might not, but if he doesn't come up with the truth, give him that truth that's somewhere in the middle, that might be what he has to end up doing. He will. He will have to end up doing that if he's asked about this by David Zaslav. And I've got a feeling he will be. May not be right away, but it will be. More than likely, it'll be asked. It'll be asked, in my opinion, during the upfronts, the media rights situation next month. That's when I think it might be asked. So, yeah, if I'm Tony Khan, this rah-rah rally the troops speech is brought up to me by David Zaslav and the other crew at WBD, and it leads him to that interview that CM Punk did with Ariel Helwani, and I'm more likely to believe Phil than Tony. If I'm Tony and they ask me, okay, what's going on? Who's telling the truth? What's going on? I better just straight up tell them the truth. Because if they ask me, okay, why did you say this? And then Punk's saying this. So if I'm Tony Khan, I go to the right people and I ask them, okay, what can I do? How do I respond to this if they ask me this? What should I do? And I guarantee you, those he'll go to will say, tell the truth. Tell the truth that's in the middle, that no one else sees. Tell them the truth and go from there. And if that's what happens, or if that's what needs to happen, then that's what needs to happen. If he wants to remain on TBS and TNT. Because, like I said, I don't think he's going to want to have to advertise, hey, this fall, find Collision on Discovery. Or, hey, this fall, find Dynamite on True TV. Or, hey, find Rampage on Syndication. He's not going to want to do that. There's no doubt he's not going to want to do that. So if I'm him, I prepare myself. I prepare myself to tell the truth. Because Tony Khan, here's what he needs to do. Here's what he does not need to do. Let me correct myself. Here's what he does not need to do. He does not need to go out to the upfronts, to the media rights situation in the next few months, next month, more likely, and act like, oh, everything's fine. And let me tell you about these upcoming Dynamites, because these upcoming Dynamites and Collisions, because they're going to be some of the best shows ever, ever, ever. Or, let me tell you about Double or Nothing. It's going to be the greatest pay-per-view ever. He needs not to act like that. He needs to basically act like a businessman, a boss, with the understanding of, okay, look, if it's brought up to him, because, there's a good chance it might be, if it's brought up to him, he needs to act like a boss and be like, okay, this is why we have the indie mindset. And yes, CM Punk did quit. I didn't initially fire him, but I only said that on Collision to make myself look good in front of the roster, especially those that were saying that I didn't have the guts to do it. So he's gonna have to have some kind of response like that. And if they tell him, hey, if you want AEW to remain on TNT and TBS, then you need to because here's what I think will happen if it's brought up. If all this is brought up, someone, whether Zaslav himself or Finch or someone on the team, they're going to end up telling him, look, if you want to remain on TBS and TNT, get out of this indie mindset. Tell your talent that you're no longer going to be competing on the indies anymore. You're going to be exclusive AEW talent. And oh, by the way, we will start doing live events again because that helps out too. If somebody brings that up and they say, hey, do you value Dynamite and Collision and Rampage that much and Ring of Honor that much? Then if you want to remain, that's the directive you need to go in. If I'm Tony Khan and somebody brings that up to me, because they heard what Punk said, if I'm Tony Khan and I want to keep my shows on the two biggest platforms I know they can be on and be seen on, then I basically, I basically agree, okay, you're right. We need to get out of the indie mindset. And I'm not going to be surprised that, in the very near future, you hear, outlets like PW Insider, Fightful Select, if you believe anything they say, Wrestling Observer, do not be surprised, if in the future, if this all comes down, this is just my opinion, my speculative opinion of what I see happening, as a result of all this going down. Don't be surprised that in the future, you start hearing those outlets talking about AEW talent now being exclusive only to AEW and not being allowed to compete on the indies. And that now, because they're being exclusive to AEW only, and oh, by the way, they're also going to start doing live events, here and there, because they want to finally, compete with WWE, or because it's a result of the media rights deals to keep, Collision and Dynamite on TNT and TBS, along with Rampage. Do not be surprised, if that gets reported. Don't be surprised if they start reporting that because, of what happens, next month or in the next few months. Don't be surprised by that. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, like I said, in closing, the rebuttal response, whether or not it was Adam's own new doing or was something that Tony Khan requested him do, and even writing out a big fat check with extra zeros as a bonus to do it. Again, it's up to people's interpretation, but either way you slice it, let's be honest, it was not a good response, not a good rebuttal, and it's going to cause more people, even Zaslav and his crew, to believe Punk more so than anything once they start hearing, what this interview was about and everything from the MMA Hour and Ariel Helwani. But that's just my thoughts, guys. I know I might have sounded like I was all over the place. It's 9:42 in the morning. I just woke up a little while ago, got some coffee with me, and I'm also trying to do this before my mom gets up, from bed because, she's on spring break. But yeah, that's just my thoughts though on, what I feel, of what I feel about, the rebuttal last night on Dynamite, and how I feel basically it's going to cause people like Zaslav and his crew to believe more of Punk, than, what Tony Khan, has to say. So, and I still stick by what I said in my other audio video yesterday too. It might hurt. And I say it might, not saying it will, but it might hurt. Their chances of remaining on TBS and TNT, but we'll see. We shall see. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below. The other outlets to find me are in the description. And until then, subscribe to the channel as well. And until then, guys, I will talk to y'all later. Have a good rest of your day. If I do more, you'll see it later.